All right, this is our final segment this morning. News Channel 5 legal analyst Nick Leonardo with us. Wanted to just shift gears in our final segment to talk about Johnny Depp, Amber Heard. If you would, the way you understood it, Amber Heard was arguing that the wrong jurors showed up for trial than the one that was called, and that there should have been a mistrial, which the judge denied because, well, the details of it are confusing. They called a juror to come in for voir dire, which is the selection process, and instead of, I'm guessing, the juror called, his son showed up. They had the same name, lived at the same address, and the son went through voir dire and was still selected for the jury, but it wasn't the 75-year-old. And I agree with the judge's decision. That's not grounds for a mistrial. What do you think?
Well, I mean, I haven't paid that much attention. I think that issue, though, I have paid attention to this issue, and I think it's kind of fascinating. You know, I don't think that anyone, I think both sides, Heard side and the Depp side, they both knew that that was going on contemporaneously, you know, at the time, and neither one of them objected. Okay, I think maybe if they
that was the time to do it.
Right, that was the time to do it. Now they clearly could have raised that issue, but I think it would have been helpful if they had, you know, objected at that time. But clearly they didn't. But so she's, you know, pursuing her remedies in a civil case, just like a criminal case. If you try a case like that and you are, you know, you win or you lose, you know, both sides have the right to appeal to a higher court as a matter of right. And before you do that, you file a motion for new trial, and that's what she's done. And the motion for new trial, you raise the issues there that you're going to raise in your appeal. Okay, so that's just but one of the issues. But it's a fascinating issue because if you're called for jury duty here in Davidson County, and you go down to the jury assembly room and show up down at, you know, at the Beres building, you know, you show a driver's license, and you know, if your last name is Williams or, you know, Beres, your son could go, and maybe they don't catch a difference in the first names, or maybe y'all have the same names. You know, I mean, they just want to make sure that you're there, and they see your ID, they give you a name badge. They don't really, you know, they have your vitals, but they don't go through them like that. You know, you got 300 people coming in within an hour's period of time, sometimes 45 minutes. You got to process them and get them through. So that's a strong possibility that, you know.
Is that a problem, though? I mean, it happens very rarely, but is that a big deal? Because you're still, even if the wrong one shows up, you're still sitting through voir dire, and you're still being questioned, and you're being vetted, and then if you end up on the jury, you're there, and both sides have already agreed on it. I don't see how that could be, because you know what I think happened? I think Amber Heard's legal team was aware that the wrong one showed up, and they just thought, don't say anything, and we'll have this in our back pocket if we lose, to bring this up and throw it at the judge and see what happens. And the judge, of course, did the right thing because he or she didn't think that it prejudiced anyone, right?
Right.
She got a fair trial.
Well, you got to be careful. I mean, obviously, the district attorney's office, you know, that's one thing I wish would change here in Davidson County, but they have the right to use NCIC, or the National Criminal Information, you know, background check on all these prospective jurors, where the defense doesn't have that, you know. So they have a little more of a leg up because they are in law enforcement, and so clearly you don't want somebody coming in there that could be a felon, okay? The other thing, and we saw this in the Vanderbilt rape trial, one of the first ones, you know, that people get on these juries because they have an axe to grind, like this particular guy did, or they want the book deal, and so I think that's why.
And they're not truthful in answering questions, right?
Right. And so they could seriously can be prosecuted for that as well, because you are put under oath in voir dire when you're asked questions, and you're supposed to answer truthfully.
So do you think in this case, the son of the 75-year-old, that they just said, hey, look, we have the same name. Son, would you go? I can't sit through this trial. How do you think that happened? What do you imagine happened
Or somebody's a fan of Edward Scissorhands, or someone's a fan.
And his son really wanted to go see Johnny Depp.
Right,
something
or
like
the
that.
Pirates of the Caribbean character, right? I mean, he's truly famous. I mean, you know, he's big time.
Yeah, and what do you think? You know, I know Amber Heard is an actress, but her fame is dwarfed by Johnny Depp's. Just based on the coverage I saw and the way it went, I'm not saying the verdict was wrong the way they came back with, but Johnny Depp was found guilty of similar charges in England, okay? But here in America, where he's a much bigger star, even though he is a global star, he's acquitted on similar type things. Do you think fame played a role in certainly not only the coverage, but possibly the jury? Because of who he is?
Of course it is. I mean, that's what we're talking about.
So they're looking at this and they're like, Captain Jack Sparrow would not have done this to this woman.
Well, but that's what makes for the good TV. Everybody wants to see what Johnny Depp looks like when he's on the hot seat, right? I mean, is he still, you know, Captain Jack Sparrow? Is he like Edward Scissorhands? Is he, you know, what's his demeanor like? But clearly, when you're talking about $20 million, you know, or $10 million going back and forth between them, I mean, that's arguing over nothing. I mean, there's clearly some hurt feelings between the both of them,
right.
and of course that's part of, being famous like that. People sue you. You're not above the law. You either write a check or you have to go to court. And I think a lot of times famous people are extorted. I think that they don't want, they don't want to go to court. They don't want to be asked all these questions in a deposition. Have you ever?
Yeah.
Right. And so sometimes it's just easier to write a check for some of these folks. But clearly, in this case, he felt strongly enough about his position that he wasn't going to do that.
Yeah. Well, I think $10 million is not much to Johnny Depp. It is to Amber Heard.
And he didn't want the money, though.
No, it's not, and it wasn't. That's what I was going to say. The reason he went through this, and you're right, I'm sure he would have preferred not to have, is what she said in that interview, where she didn't name him per se, but said that she had been through it and everyone assumed it was him. He said destroyed his career. That, he said, he just said, and since then, there haven't been a lot of roles with him in it.
He's also 70.
I would make the argument that, well, not only if he's that old, but I'd make the argument it's been a while since Johnny Depp has had any hit movies anyway, but he's still a big star, but he claimed that Disney dropped him from any further appearances as Captain Jack Sparrow, and I don't know if it had anything to do with this case, but he just said, that negativity of what she said cost me. I need to go and get my name clear in court so that maybe my career can happen. I don't want this hanging over me that I did this.
No, I don't think. That'd be like, Han Solo, Indiana Jones, or Harrison Ford.
Well, why else would he do it? Because remember, he was suing her. Why not just let it go then if it's no big deal instead of having to sit there and answer all these embarrassing questions?
Personally, I don't think that you could really destroy anybody's career like a Johnny Depp or Harrison Ford or Tom Cruise. That people still bounce back from that stuff. Clearly, I just don't think
it just depends on the level. The media these days, you look at in a much more serious crime, but Kevin Spacey, his career's in the toilet.
Yeah, well,
there's a lot of people that get toasted. Now that's more serious, but I'm just saying, yeah, I don't know that Johnny Depp still was going on. If he never works another day in his life, he has more than enough money.
Right.
But I thought my impression was that he wasn't doing this to sue to get money. He was doing this to try to clear his name, or maybe because he's just so angry at her.
Well, clearly, and you may have that desire. You may really feel, I'm not saying that he didn't feel that way. I'm just saying that, I don't know that it would have really impacted him as much as he might have thought. Like you said, look at Kevin Spacey. Those are heinous charges. Those are really bad charges, okay? This is what appears to be a disgruntled ex-wife, it's no different, than her calling IRS and trying to tell on him or something like that. You see it every day, but, I'm sure his feelings were hurt, and maybe that's why he did want to try to clear his name. And if nothing else, when you sue people like that, if you settle, you can get a confidentiality and a settlement agreement, okay? And so I can't get you to hush, okay? But if you settle this case and take my check, I can, okay?
Yes, right.
And if we go to trial, I'm not going to get you to hush because the judge can't make you hush, right? So a lot of times people sue to get agreements in writing for consideration that will prevent people from speaking further about a particular issue.
Yeah.
And that's the only way to get it is through a settlement. So maybe that's what he was thinking, and she called his hand on it and said, no, I want to go to trial. So he was kind of forced to go to trial.
Do you think now, she still has the ability to appeal, okay? There's still appeals for her to do. Could he, since she owes him $10 million now, get with her and say, listen, we're going to have it written up. I will drop the money. You don't have to give it to me, or you only have to give me $2 million or whatever. If you just end this now and we write it out, can he do that? And would something like that hold up?
Sure, happens all the time. People will settle things on appeal all the time. That's one of the first cases I won. I tried a jury trial and I got a judgment for almost $300,000, and I thought, gosh, I'm rich. Well, they appealed it, and so it took a few more years, and we ended up settling it because my client wanted the money.
So
and
you said, look, we've already won. You're appealing. If you'll pay us a portion of what this settlement is, then we'll take less.
Right.
But you have to pay it, and we'll just get done with this.
Right, and that may be what they see. And I don't know that it's about money for either one of them, clearly.
Well, I think Johnny Depp just wants it to end, and if he can get her to agree to just stop appealing and let's just move on with our lives.
He can do that.
The way he could get her to do it is saying, listen, if you just end. Now, how would you lock her into that? There would be a legal document drawn up where she would say, I'm accepting that he doesn't want the $10 million. In return for that, I agree never to sue him again on these charges.
Well,
or
it would be
appeal.
a confidentiality non-disclosure agreement, and you would set forth in there when you see a lot that you're not going to, Johnny Depp's name is not going to come out of your mouth. You're not going to tell anybody what we agreed upon. You will not further disparage him. And if you do, then there's usually like what they call liquidated damages provision. If you do that, then you'll owe him $150 million or something, right?
Yeah.
Or you'll forfeit something if you are found to have done that. And so again, the only way to get that kind of an effect in a legal scenario is to settle. Because when you go to trial, the jury comes back with a verdict, and they're still free to talk and say whatever they want to say.
Yeah, and the other point on this is you see that he wins the $10 million, or in any case like the one you just said. I guess money doesn't have to be paid until the appeals are exhausted?
Well, money never has to be paid. That's the unfortunate part.
Well,
you have to collect on the judgment.
Yeah, how do you collect on the judgment?
So there's different things you could do. I mean, you could garnish wages if he worked at UPS, or he doesn't. But I mean, if he had some job, if he worked at Metro or for the state, you could garnish wages. You could also hit a bank account with a levy, and you could do an execution. You could go and try to take a vehicle. You could try to record that judgment and put a lien on his house. Okay, but to make him pay, we don't have debtors' prisons. Okay,
Yeah.
and so if he doesn't care about you taking assets or the like, I mean, that's the thing. Just because you have a judgment, people don't realize that. It's a common misconception. Just because you win in court and you have a money judgment, now you got to collect on it. Now you got to make them pay.
Now you have to make him pay. So with Amber Heard, if she's not paying, can he start seeking to get the money now, or does he have to wait until the appeals are heard?
So once the judgment becomes final, then he can move forward with that.
Okay.
And so, California's different. In Tennessee, on something like that, day 31 takes 30 days for the judgment to become final. If they do not appeal, day 31, he can go after his money. Okay, but if she appeals, then he gets prejudgment interest on that during the appeal, which would be 5%, per annum he would get on the money while it appealed. But an appellate process like that off of a long trial, it can take 2.5 years and then if it's affirmed or the higher court, the Court of Appeals agrees, then after they issue their mandate, then he can go after the money.
Gosh, the wheels of justice turn slow.
Especially when and people are pros at that. People don't mind judgments. People that have, they know how it works. They know.
Gosh. Nick, thank you for coming on. This is great, and maybe we'll talk to you some next week as we follow along with what happens with the Alex Friedmann trial. It's going to be interesting to watch. We'll all be following that one.
It sure will be.
And certainly as we continue to monitor going down the road, as there are more high-profile cases that come, we always consider when we'll consider doing a gavel-to-gavel one. There will be others to come, just not the Friedmann one. So thanks, my friend.
Good to see you.
We'll talk to you again soon. Take a break. Programming note right after this. Stay with us.